I am Dr. John Watson.
Sherlock Holmes, The Devil's Daughter. Jim Trinker,
Absolutely.
You've played it.
I have indeed.
Tell me all about it.
Well, it's similar to the previous game, which is something you could
Great.
say about every single Sherlock Holmes game that's come out, right? Yeah, so I reviewed Crimes and Punishments 2 years ago.
Which was the predecessor, the
Yes,
immediate predecessor to this
immediate
game.
predecessor to this one.
Predecessor 2.
Yes, and it's very similar in structure. So what Crimes and Punishments brought in, just for a little bit of background, up until this point, all the Sherlock Holmes games had told like one big story over 25, 30 hours. Well, probably about 20 hours. And what Crimes and Punishments did differently was that it was 5 shorter cases.
Like L.A. Noire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Which all kind of tied up at the end, but it felt a bit more digestible and a bit less impenetrable, because there's always a point with big, I guess, wordy stories like that in games where, especially the way we consume these things, where we might come back to it after a month or whatever, you know, it can get a bit, you don't know where you are halfway through. So I think it's a better style, it's a better approach to these types of games that they're doing. That's why episodic adventure games work so well, right?
Gotcha.
So that was the big innovation that Crimes and Punishments brought in. And this is following that same template. So it's 5 cases. And again, we are promised that, obviously don't know the full details of this, but we are promised that they will all tie together at the end. So Devil's Daughter is very much a sequel to Crimes and Punishments, rather than just being the next Sherlock Holmes game.
And Crimes and Punishments was good, right?
It was good, yeah.
Yeah. So how's this different apart from the cases? What's been improved?
It's mostly about presentation. The actual mechanics of the game are pretty much the same. The systems, the interfaces, because what Sherlock Holmes is 2 games essentially. There's 2 halves to the game. The first half is going to the locations and collecting the evidence, interviewing people, and what you're doing is collecting facts, collecting observations, which you can then use at the point where you get to the deduction screen to look at the information and say, right, well, this obviously means that, this means that, so that's the motive, this is obviously the guy. And then you pick your suspect, you accuse them, you decide what to do with them, and you don't actually find out whether or not you're right until the very end of the game. So you could be wrong. It is entirely possible.
Sherlock Holmes is never wrong.
Well, exactly, but you are.
But then
it's very easy.
No, I don't like this. I want Holmes vision. Does it have detective vision?
It does have detective vision.
It?
Yeah.
Amazing.
For spotting clues and things. But yeah, so the idea of this is that you're not just kind of going through and checking boxes to advance the story or get to the next bit. You are actually making decisions.
You're deducing.
And you can be wrong. The game will let you fail and pick the wrong person, send the wrong person to prison.
But that's fine though. Like as long as someone goes to prison.
You're kind of working for the Met, right? So fit ups are standard practice. So,
but with this game, right, and this series in general, it had a reputation of being an interesting game for anyone who would actually play it. But 99% of people would see the graphics and laugh their balls off. And then just never.
Well, you see, this is what is improved this time around, and what has been steadily improving. Because I know before they did the Jack the Ripper one a few years back, these games were a bit of a laughing stock. And then Jack the Ripper had something that made people sit up and take notice. And then the next one looked nicer and was better presented. This one, it's not AAA. It's not it clearly hasn't had...
Single A?
Single A, double A, that kind of level.
Those games don't get made anymore.
Well, they do now. They're back.
This and Homefront 2.
It looks really good. You can tell it's not as expensive as something like, to pick something that's similar in setting. Assassin's Creed Syndicate has obviously had money leathered into every conceivable, every speck of dust. This it obviously isn't that kind of level, but... it holds its own. It doesn't look out of place on the current consoles. It doesn't look out of place as a 2016 game, I would say. And they've also changed the characters. Keep in mind that the underlying mechanics of the game haven't really changed, but the characters, they're totally different. Up until now, this game series might as well have been an actual direct adaptation of the Jeremy Brett series.
That's the old one.
Yeah, I hope people are actually familiar with this.
That's the old ITV?
ITV did a series, Jeremy Brett in the lead, and it's considered by many to be like, kind of one of the definitive adaptations.
Proper Victorian shit.
Proper Victorian.
None of this running around, 2010s
None
era
of this
Mayfair.
Fucking Cumberbatch goes around with that twat from The Office. Fucking nonsense. And none of it makes any bloody sense. Actual
memory palaces.
It was more like the Poirot approach, where they were just taking the stories and adapting them and doing as
so they didn't have to do any work, right?
Doing as authentic and lavish a job as they could with what they had.
Those were good.
And this series has obviously, clearly taken its lead from that series in the past. Now they've changed Watson, so Watson used to look exactly like the guy who played Watson in that series.
Yeah.
Now he sort of looks like...
Instead of looking like
he
a
looks
doctor,
like a member of fucking Mumford & Sons. Do you know what I mean?
He looks like a junior doctor.
Yeah.
Except slightly less stressed.
Yeah. Like, he looks like he shouldn't really be treating cholera. He looks like he should be fucking,
On a residency somewhere.
advising people on what kind of syrup he's going to put in your coffee and shit. And his demeanor's different. I think it's a different actor. Sherlock, there's always been a long history of Sherlock being a bit of a junkie, right? It's kind of a running theme that when he hasn't got a case to work on, he gets bored and just gets gacked off his face. Yeah. And that's kind of the running theme of this game. You see him kind of very disheveled a lot and telling people, get the fuck out of my face.
I do like how that's just become accepted, though. Yeah. As in, obviously, because it's seems to have been a big part of the earlier stuff. But when you think Sherlock Holmes, you always just think genius detective. I don't think a lot of people think mad gack-addled.
Mad fucking junkie. That's what he
opium,
is.
Isn't it? Like, have they updated the drugs for this one as well?
No, absolutely not. It's still like, it's still opiates and, injecting a solution of cocaine.
Okay, right.
So, not quite as sophisticated
so
as,
not
as your modern junkie, right? But, the first case fades up and he's just on the sofa. Just like, oh, fuck. But, so he's a bit more rough and ready. He sounds different. He's not the sort of Victorian gent. He's actually just like, oh Christ, here we go. And it's different. It's some way between Jeremy Brett and the Robert Downey Jr. version of the character.
Ooh.
Right?
All right. I saw both those movies in the cinema and I don't know why.
Yeah. They're not great versions of the Sherlock Holmes canon, but Downey Jr.'s got something, whatever he's doing, right? Yeah. So it's kind of taking bits from the modern interpretations but still very much the Jeremy Brett kind of prototype. And that's the real difference here, is that they've changed the central characters, modernized them, made them possibly more appealing to an audience that isn't necessarily asked about Sherlock Holmes, doesn't really care whether or not they can see the bullet holes for where he shot VR into the wall.
Oh, no one cares.
Nobody gives a shit about that stuff, right? What they care about is, look, what's Sherlock doing? How gacked off his fucking face is he? And is he going to punch anyone?
It's done it.
Yeah, it has. Yeah. I mean, it's a great modernization of what they were doing before. It's a great evolution in terms of presentation. They've kept all the things that work and that are good. And from what I've played so far, I played about 3 hours at a preview event. It's more the same, but in the best possible way. And I really enjoyed it.
Jim, you've actually got me interested in these games.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was interested before, but not necessarily in picking up another one of them. So I'm going to check it out now.
Yeah.
And, if you've... Oh, listen to this. If you've liked what you've heard, check out the rest of Video Gamer TV. Check it out and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll find you and all the opium in the world won't do anything for you after that. See ya.
Well, you heard the man. If you want more gameplay videos, silly stuff, nonsense, the odd review, incisive commentary, humour, click that big red subscribe button and then you can keep tabs on everything we do.